Welcome to Kinwise Conversations. Today we're talking with Mike McGuckin, a computer science teacher, AI Trailblazer, and on-the-ground innovator from Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools. As the only North Carolina educator in the inaugural AI Trailblazer Fellowship, Mike quickly went from teaching himself a new curriculum to guiding teachers across the state. So how does a busy high school teacher with 3 preps and 3 kids under 2 actually use AI to make his job more manageable and to make him more effective as a teacher? We'll explore his playbook for using AI as an idea bouncer to reclaim time for students, his approach to navigating the ethics of AI in the classroom, and what it really means to be a future ready educator in a world of constant change. Let's dive in. Hi, Mike. I'm so glad to have you on the podcast today. It's the middle of the school day for you towards the end. So you are really kind of on the ground with students and with fellow educators, navigating a lot of things, and one of them being AI. And so I'm so excited to just take a minute for you to talk about your journey in education and artificial intelligence and what brought you to this work and what's motivated and interested you.
Yeah, so I got into teaching in 2018 at Thomasville High School. And when I was there, I spent my first 5 years as a swim coach, ended that career at Thomasville as the assistant athletic director, and then moved to Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools in 2023, right around the time when my son was born, my firstborn. And since then, able to get into computer science, which is something I'm passionate about. And within that first year, I really just took off in computer science and artificial education and have really been set in the stone for that and have done work not just at the local level, but even at the state level.
That's amazing, Mike. And I I'm curious just about computer science because you mentioned that. Do you have a background in computer science or is that just something that you've been interested in throughout your life?
So I originally, when went to Old Dominion University, I started out as a computer science major and could not really get the math part to figure out for me. So I switched my majors to sport management. And when I was a senior and doing my internship, I ended up working in high school students. So after I graduated college, I went to Macon, Georgia, where I did group sales for a year and left there to go teach at Thomasville High School. And once I wanted to get back into high school, I like high school education, like athletics, and had a background in computer science and really had a little passionate about it and teaching students about programming and design and really all sorts of things related to computer science. So once I came to Winston-Salem State County Schools and saw that I was teaching computer science class, after learning the new curriculum in a semester, I really enjoyed the class and have made a little tweaks to make it more engaging and more fun. But my students have enjoyed learning computer science, and some of them have gone into college taking computer science courses because they had exposure here at Glenn High School and in Winston-Salem County Schools to push forward towards that, especially as that field is expanding rapidly with the use of artificial intelligence and people need programmers, people need all sorts of people to be able to do things for them.
It's funny because earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, but I was reading this report about how earning potentials increase when students have access to one computer science class. And
Yeah.
so I think it's a class that is not necessarily required for every student, but then is associated with these really positive outcomes for students who are able to engage. So that must be a cool area of work to be
Yeah,
involved with.
it is. And the state of North Carolina, I know not this current school year, but the next school year, it's going to be a state law where every freshman or the graduating class of 2030 must have at least one computer science credit. Now, it may not just be a computer science principles class, but it also can be a technology, engineering, and design class where now you're teaching computer science inside of that unit. So it's one of the classes that is new to me that I'm teaching this year, and once I saw the first unit of computer science, I got really excited about that because that's something I'm passionate about and I know a lot about. And we just been that small unit in there. And now we're on to other things. It's just it's improving and just that graduation requirement is coming to full fruition. And this current school year is the last year that this school district could use a waiver unless the General Assembly decides to not require that graduation requirement. It's a
That's really
whole mess.
awesome. Yeah, that's really cool that it's going to be able to expand and we're going to have more students having access to courses like the
Mhm.
ones that you're teaching. I want to ask you about your AI involvement and how you've been able to do. I know you were one of the AI Trailblazers. You did that fellowship with AI EDU. You want to share a little bit about what that was like and what you were able, why you decided to do it? What was that experience like for you?
So I decided to do it. I saw a post on the Facebook AP Computer Science Principles group, and I thought, well, I'm passionate about artificial intelligence. I just finished my second master's degree in sport management and the graduate certificate in project management. I started using artificial intelligence when I was in that second master's program, only as a guidelines and to get an idea and all the journal articles I had to read. It was just easy for me to download and upload them to ChatGPT to kind of get a summary so I knew what I was talking about while also trying to raise a child and do lots of other things. So once I got accepted in that program, I realized I was the one of 25 teachers in the nation. So just to be involved in that was one of substantial itself, but I was the only one from North Carolina to be involved in that. So that
Wow.
really skyrocketed me to lots of different roles inside of AIEDU or like even inside the state of North Carolina. I have lots of different teachers message me over email and send me messages on different platforms asking me about artificial intelligence and have really had a passionate for it as I've seen it grow in the past couple years as we have used it more and more. And now it's part of our daily life. It's fun teaching it, and it's interesting looking at that pivotal moment of me being that trailblazer, being the only one from the state of North Carolina, and the be represent just not just the state, but a lot of one of 25 other teachers in the nation to be part of that fellowship. It's a huge honor.
That's really amazing, and it's interesting because North Carolina has really been kind of at the forefront of AI in education. We were the
Yeah.
4th state that had our AI guidelines published, and it's cool to meet somebody like you who's a teacher who's been able to maybe move some of that implementation forward and be a part of a national cohort that's thinking
Yeah.
about what AI looks like in classrooms. I'm curious about what it looks like in your class now that you're using AI and teaching with AI. If I came into your classroom, what would I learn or how would you be integrating the technology?
So AI, as we know, changes every minute of every day. It's just keeping up with the change. So we offer a artificial intelligence intro course that the state has created. So we teach out of that course. It was originally developed by the North Carolina Science and Math Center and has slowly been updated. I've been helping update that course to a point, but we start out with the ethics portions of AI and just more of I teach my students that though there are different self-driving cars, for example, they have to make a decision whether to harm people in the car or harm the people on the road. These are hard ethical questions I have them answer and tell them this is what a programmer has to think. And we go into a little bit of algorithms and bias and data. And then right now we're talking scratch programming just to get a little programming involved in it. But we go into sensors, and my favorite unit is chatbot creativity. So I use a tool on Magic School to allow my students to create their own chatbots to demonstrate the ability to create their own chatbots, while I will also show them on an unrestricted side of it for ChatGPT. I've created my own chatbots for almost everyday resources. I have a chatbot that helps me get my AP classes to be a little more adept and really pushing forward to get the higher scores on their AP exams. It's just more of the constant boosting, and we do a lot of different things in that class. We jump around a little bit, but it all correlates together. At the end, their final project, they have to create their own AI resource, but they do not have to do any of the programming. They're just designing it, writing it's a big paper where they have to research and find different resources. I had one student look at healthcare and design kind of built on paper an AI tool that be unbiased in helping diagnose medical diagnoses. So those are just some of the things that we do in the class that trying to help elevate it. And that project I know is being used across a couple of different school districts in North Carolina, but it's a learning curve. There's people that never taught this class before, and they're just like, "What do I do? How do I teach this?" Like, and I have to sit down and think about what those problems are. And there's some things that I'm not 100% sure on, but I try to do the research and prepare for my students.
Yeah, that makes sense because the field of AI has been around for a long time, but this, machine learning, deep learning, it's becoming complex. There's a lot of math and
Yeah.
a lot of complexity in how the technology works, trying to figure out what are the most important aspects that students need to understand to teach it well, and then support the different educators around the state that it sounds like you're working alongside as well. That's a big job.
Yeah, we have a Moodle, and I will meet with anyone as needed to help go through the class, and tell them about the class and work with them. There's only one other teacher in my district that teaches it, so I work with them all throughout the time as needed, and he'll reach out to me occasionally to ask questions, but when we do get into some of the complex math, that's where I kinda draw a line of I'm not I'm not comfortable teaching my students this if I don't understand it, and that's one of the things that I told some of the teachers, like, if I'm not comfortable teaching it, I'll show them the math behind it, but I'm not teaching the math because I don't understand it.
I was talking last week with Dr. Brene Bent, who works at Duke, and she has developed this course on AI concepts for people who hate math. I'll link it in this episode. It was fun to talk to her because she's like, there's so much math and artificial intelligence, and sometimes we forget that, or
Mhm.
people. There's a lot of people who don't have the comfort or the time to learn that deep level of math, but you still need to understand the context to
Yeah.
make the technology work well. The final project you're having students do is really solving a real world problem and
Mhm.
having them think about how this new technology can help save lives or improve people's experiences. And if
Mhm.
you understand the technology, then you can at least conceptualize that and talk
Yeah.
intelligently with other people about what's possible.
Yeah, and remaining unbiased, that's one of the hardest things. So we watch videos where a computer may be unbiased to a specific group of people, and I tell them you have to think about everyone when you do this. It's a hard thing to teach them, and it's hard to visualize, like how some computers may not be able to recognize some issues. That there's political, societal, and economic issues that a computer does not understand yet, but you have to be able to not be biased towards one or the other. You have to be in the middle, and that's usually hard when you have to develop something.
What do you think is the most important thing for students in your class to understand about artificial intelligence?
I think the hardest part to understand is not to use it for everyday task. Unfortunately, we saw last week a student ended their life with the use of artificial intelligence. And that's something we discussed in my class that artificial intelligence is great. It can be wrong, and it's not meant to replace your individual people that are with you. So I encourage very safe use of it. Students are not supposed to be using artificial intelligence, but I know that they do use it. And we talk about the dangers of artificial intelligence and how there's a whole phenomenon of you people are going there for answers and not doing the research. And when I talk to PDs, I tell them, you know what your students write, and you can easily tell if something's true or not true, or if it's written by them, really. I tell them that when I use artificial intelligence, I use it as a idea bouncer. I will ask questions, research the topic a little bit more, and then go in and solve problems. So when I was doing a programming task, I was having an issue, so I used artificial intelligence not to debug my code, but then help to understand why something was wrong. So for students, they may just get the answer when the answer could be wrong because it's not 100% accurate. And that's one of the things I tell my students that yes, you can use artificial intelligence on your own personal life, but the answer may not be 100% accurate. My AP class, they have the ability from College Board to use it to help programming. And I tell them that you can use it, but just know that you need to be able to explain what it is and what it's doing. And that discourages some of them because they may just want to submit something with artificial intelligence, not use it. I tell them, "You get your program, get everything you can, and then go back and take a look further into what can make this better or what was a different solution, use different ways to explore and not be using too much of it. And that's one of the things I tell my students, like, yes, it's great, it's here, it's fast, it's getting better, but it's not 100% reliable, and don't use it on everyday task.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for educators to feel comfortable having conversations with students because some uses of artificial intelligence are really useful, some are really dangerous. So it's great that there are teachers like you who are able to have these conversations so that students can make informed choices because, when y you build understanding of life throughout your life, and so when you're in high school or middle school or even elementary school, you're at the beginning of building that understanding.
Yeah, even at the college level, if they move on and they can't rely on artificial intelligence to be able to do their job for them, that's one of the hard parts to look at. So when I tell my students, it's you got to be careful. Just like you go on the internet, you need to be careful what you look at, what you download, because there's people out there that may want to try to do things that are not okay. And that's just some of the things. It's a safety thing. And I tell all my students that, but then we're seeing more and more of those things happen throughout the nation, throughout the world. And it's some point that it's like we have to do things to make sure our students are using technology in the best way possible.
Absolutely. I want to flip from the student perspective to the, using teaching students about AI perspective to using it as an educator, using it to support other educators. I'm curious about for you how AI has helped you. You mentioned this a little bit with AP, but like how do you use it as a teacher? How do you recommend other teachers use it? And then maybe we can talk a little bit about the PD that you've led.
Yeah, so I use it mainly as I said before, an idea generator first off. When I got access to a new curriculum this year for my newest class, and I got it the week that school, like the next week's, I think I got it Wednesday and school was starting on a Monday. So I had no time to review what I wanted to do. So I use artificial intelligence to kind of lay out like some projects or some tasks that we could do. And even with specific on dates, like we're not in school on these days. This is this break. It kind of gave me an idea where I wanted to be and pace and guide. And that's how I use it when I taught artificial intelligence for the first time last year as someone who I got the curriculum. It was kind of bone dry. So I was like, okay, what can I do to make this curriculum a little bit better? So I used artificial intelligence to help me create presentations and went back and made changes to those presentations. When we talk about ethics and stuff, it makes it easier. Or I want to talk about the history of computer science, where we are now from where we were even 50 years ago, and I've only been in education for 7 years. So this has been a wild ride to kind of see artificial intelligence come out. It's been real crazy watching the way I use it, which I use it one for AP courses, but I also use it for some everyday task. So I may put in a lesson plan or put in a plan or like a project. I want to do a mousetrap car in my class. So I'll put in a mousetrap car project and give it a timeline, and it will give me a timeline when I need to get it, what parts do I need to get done on what day. And I can even get a rubric. And I use that as well to kind of help me at least take some of the weight off me so I can focus on other things or just helping my students understand concepts or take really help me get off of lesson planning and be more engaged to my students and help with other people overall.
Yeah, I think it's this time trade-off where preparing to teach an entirely new course is an amazing amount of work that I think if you've never taught, you may not realize just the amount of work it takes if you're handed a new curriculum to figure out how to actually deliver that to your students in an engaging way.
Yeah.
Because you can't necessarily take that and teach it as is. You have to really think about your students and think about your delivery method. And so being able to make other choices about where to spend your time because you didn't have to spend as much time making presentations or figuring out some of the administrative aspects of the job of a teacher that a really positive way to use it so that you can make different choices.
Yeah, I use it I use it for a lot of different teaching aspects, and I tell my students, and I'm open with them that, "Hey, this activity is generated by artificial intelligence, so we're gonna see how it goes." And we try to see if it works. If it does, great. If it doesn't, well, I know what changes I need to make, and I can tell the artificial intelligence what changes I wanna make to that assignment, and it'll make those changes, and we'll try it again.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you can do that fairly quickly and easily. The other thing that I think you're highlighting is the importance of really thinking critically about outputs. You're not just saying,
Yeah.
oh, artificial intelligence gave this to me, it's going to be good. You're thinking about what you're getting. I had an interesting conversation a few weeks ago with a nonprofit I was working with, and they talked about how they're seeing some of their employees put their intelligence on a shelf and use AI more prominently, disregarding their own expertise because AI's outputs
Mhm.
look so good. And I think that's really tempting no matter what field you're in or if you're a
Yeah.
student to just be like, wow, this looks great. It's got to be right. But just because it looks good doesn't mean it is.
Yeah, and that's the hard part about teaching artificial intelligence and really just pushing using it is that lots of things that I do and play with may not be what I want. So when I was messing with code and programming and there are some parts that I did not understand. So I'm having artificial intelligence help me explain what I'm doing or what the issue is and go from there. Now, I was lucky enough, I grew up with technology and computers. So as things advanced, I was able to get right there at the forefront. So when the first smartphone came out, and remember really just growing up, and I was able to witness that evolution as I was growing up.
It's the internet has changed so much in the past, I don't know, 20 years. And I mean, if you've been teaching the last 7 years, you've seen some huge changes
Oh
as
yeah,
schools became much more digital. COVID forced the digital transformation in schools. There was this kind of immense pressure to make sure every student had access to some sort of
yeah,
device. And so, there was that huge push. And now we have a couple of years later, we had generative AI and kids have access to chatbots and devices. And I think that leads to some really complex challenges in the education space because, if we were all paper and pencil like some classrooms were 10 years ago, it would feel a little bit different than it does today.
yeah. It's crazy to think of how much has changed in just a short amount of time. Like we had COVID-19, and then right on the verge, like, we got out of COVID-19, then artificial intelligence started coming out and generative AI, and now I think ChatGPT is on GPT-5, like, they're moving at a rapid pace, and they're keeping up with industry leaders, and it's just been a wild ride to kinda see all that move forward.
As you work with other educators, what has that experience been like? How have you been able to support new to AI educators or people who are more hesitant? Do you see a lot of that? What does it look
Yeah,
like?
I see a lot of hesitation, just, like, when things come out and things are new, people aren't really up for trying it out. I'm that person that if something's new, I really want to try it out. So if someone who wears hearing aids, I try to get the newest and best hearing aids that's out on the market. That's just something I've always done. It allows me to test that newest technology that's out there and really get to kind of use and get used to those things. So if someone is me who's all about technology, will use the latest of the latest. I have educators that we don't like it. And even when I show them the ways they can use it, some of them do like it. Some of them choose that, well, maybe I could use it for a few things. I try to tell them, like, look, we're all busy as educators. We all have our own lives. So any time I can take to use artificial intelligence to make my life a little easier, that's what I'm going to do. And I tell them that, and they'll start to use it, and they'll come ask me questions about it, and I tell them just different answers. It's just they're hesitant, but then they're also okay with exploring it, and I tell them our students are using it. So, like, you wanna come up with ways that allow students to maybe try to look up something on ChatGPT to get the wrong answer, so that's an easy way for you to figure it out, and you can just do that with an output just by asking a question. You can ask for a non-AI response, however, it's just gonna respond in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think that's such a to be able to talk with educators and try to at least develop some familiarity because like you said, students are using AI, whether you are or not as an educator. And so your ability to understand a little bit about how the technology works and then to use it for yourself is beneficial and can help you know how to use it with your students more effectively. It's really hard. It's like
Yeah,
when computers came out, you can't really use computers well with your class if you can't use a computer yourself. So you have to be able to navigate that as an individual so that you can lead the people in your classroom.
Yeah, it's an ongoing battle. They wanna learn more about it, and they wanna discourage cheating, and that's the hard part. It's what I tell every teacher, you know what your students write, you know how they write. So if you're used to them writing a paragraph with a couple errors, and then next thing you see is a 3 paragraph paper and there's no errors in it, you can ask some questions about it. And they asked me about the detection tools, and I said, well, what is AI? What isn't AI? I can make something that is not AI that can get detected that said, oh, I used an AI generator, and that it may not be 100% right. Like, I used Grammarly when I was in college, and that was one of the things that I was encouraged to use. Well, it would flag the AI detection, but I had access to Grammarly as it would help me, like, with the grammar stuff and make everything right, versus the other alternative, which is I could do it on paper pencil and wait a couple days to get my students back to work, but I'm also trying to go less paper pencil and more on the computer and encourage the students that if you have a issue and you're trying to find something, you do research, you make the effort. Because we talked about the digital divide in my classroom today. They're working on a project in my computer science class that talks about the digital divide, net neutrality, and internet censorship. So we're talking about these real things that are happening and that how people may not have access to internet. All those Chromebooks you get, it's a product of COVID-19. They were trying to get you guys internet access when some of you may not have it, but they couldn't pick and choose. They had to give it to everyone.
Right. And so I guess you're teaching in a high school, so all of your students lived through I
Yep.
guess most of them were in middle
Middle school.
school.
It would have been
It,
middle school and maybe some in elementary school during this time if they were a freshman. So it was 5 years ago when we were all remote. So it's been about 5 years since that happened. So we're talking elementary school and middle school students.
right. And now do most of those students had access to this technology and now they still do. One thing I was talking with a friend who is an educator in Virginia, and she was telling me how after COVID, a lot of students transitioned all their courses to be digital on
Mhm.
Google Classroom. And so that has also been a change of you can submit everything digitally. We have this technology that students can use to input their assignments for them. And both of those things kind of happen, not simultaneously, but close together. So it's complicated. And the advice you gave about just knowing your students, having conversations with them, being aware, I think that's important to think through.
Yeah, as an educator, you gotta know how your students write and what they do in order to really catch them cheating. I use the AI detection that we get through for plagiarism review, and it flagged a student like submit his project, and it was because he used Grammarly to help him with the grammar stuff. That's So technically, you're not supposed to use it because district policies, but again, you're working on your writing, but you're not using it to solve the problem or to do your assignment. You're kind of using it to help understand and like get your grammar right, spell check, and all sorts of things. So it's a two-way battle, like we talked about. You have kids who are using it to boost themselves, but then you also have the other side where I'm going to get this done and get an A because my teacher doesn't care how I do the assignment.
We're in such a messy moment right now where artificial intelligence is super useful for learning and also useful for not learning. And so you have to be able to work with students and to set up assignments and to think about how do you make it feel useful and meaningful to use this technology in a way that helps you to learn because it is a great learning tool.
It's a great learning tool. It's fun to play with, and I show people like different prompts that you can ask and get different results. Even will as a joke to some of my friends, I've responded to their text messages while using AI just to kind of mess with them. And they thought something was odd when they kept getting back the responses I was sending them, but they knew exactly what it was.
That's really funny. Okay, I want to ask this question because I think it's interesting to be a teacher working in a school. And we know like principals and school leaders have so much power and influence in a school environment. And so if you have a
Mm.
principal who's really passionate about AI and dedicated, it's going to make a really big difference in that school's readiness and use of AI. I'm curious from your perspective, if you had a school leader, principal, curious if AI is worth their time right now. What would you say to them, or what would you encourage them to think about?
I say it's worth it. Play around with it, explore it. When I lead PDs, that's one of the best ways I've always learned to teach is play around, kind of see what you can get, and then go back and try to get something else. Principals ask me about stuff, and they ask me all sorts of things related to artificial intelligence and computer science. I have to put on my thinking cap and think exactly what they're looking for and help them get to their answer that they're trying to get to. I think it's useful for those day-to-day activities. Like, I know Magic School has a newsletter option where you can use AI to generate a newsletter for you. And haven't done it yet and thought about it, but thought about using that for parent contact and sending different newsletters, what we're doing in class and what we're learning about. I think it would help them get in and out of different things quicker, but to use it to the full advantage that they would want to use it, they'd have to sit down and just play with it. They don't know what all it can do, and you don't know what anything can do until you sit down and play with it and create things that make it work.
Yeah, taking the time to understand the technology that you have access to and then to make choices accordingly. You've mentioned Magic School AI. What AI tools would you recommend to other educators?
So it depends on what they do. So I actually do pay for ChatGPT at the professional level. So I pay, I think it's $20, $25 a month for it. And I use ChatGPT more often because it seems to be as soon as ChatGPT does something, I see Magic School, I see all the other ones release their models too. So I feel that ChatGPT is the leader in this industry. Now for Magic School, we're about to do this project in a couple weeks. I use their chatbot activity. So I have my students create a chatbot. That's one thing that is really cool. They have to write a report and show me their chatbot interactions. And that's something that they kind of find increasingly fun and cool. And that's one of the activities that I plan to keep around for this course as long as I can. I've used some other ones. I use Diffit to help with some students for literacy, and there's one out there for almost everything. At one point, I used CodeGrader a good bit to help grade assignments, and that I thought that what they were doing was really cool, and used it for a little bit. But those are just some of the AI tools that are out there, and there's so many out there. It's just kind of finding one, playing with it, and see if it fits for you. I paid for ChatGPT because I was using it a good bit, and once I got the AI course to teach it, I was like, "Okay, we're gonna need everything we can." I may not be able to understand some things, but I know ChatGPT has been able to help me out a little bit, so I've been using that to really push me, but I also will use any resource out there. Like, I've used Microsoft Copilot as well to kinda test out and play around with. It's like different tools do different things and just finding the one that works for you.
Right. Even, these foundation models like ChatGPT or Copilot are trained on different data sets.
Yep.
So you can get different outputs based on how the training data looks. So those are things to consider too. Has there been a moment for you as you started using AI with your students or in preparing for class where you were like, oh, this was like the best use ever? And have you had any missteps? You're like, that did not, that didn't work that well. So, like the high and the low of working with AI over the last couple of years for you.
Yeah, so the high, especially in a large class of 20 plus kids where I have some of them sending me emails or messages about their code when it gets to some point where I'm just looking through lines and lines and lines of code and I get a headache to try to find those small errors. That's where I find the AI high points because I know it's really good at detecting, tells me the line, tells me how to fix it, and I'll send the student like, "This is where your error is," but I won't tell them the solution. I'll see the solution, but I'll tell them, "This is where your error is," and I'll verify that that's where that error is. And then I'll see if they send back either it's fixed or if there's another error, and I look at their code and go back to the chat AI model and see it. The hard part would be like some of the lessons I've used AI for has been a little harder. It doesn't hit the topics. I have to be very specific on what exactly I'm looking for. So it's just playing around with it. And sometimes it does take time consuming to get something that you want out of it. So when I try to get a presentation out of ChatGPT, I have to be very specific. It'll ask me if I want images and things included, which is newer than what it used to do. And I would say yes, but then sometimes it won't do it, and then other times it will. So that part gets is a little bit of a low point, but allows me to work through that process. The low points just taking more time that I'm trying to, with my already busy schedule, to figure out.
Yeah. And I think that low point also highlights the importance of your expertise as an educator to bring into the space. Like you have to know what should this lesson be like? What's going to resonate with my students? What do I need to include? I think there is such an importance of having that human lens and that perspective, even though it takes time and can be frustrating. You know what it needs to be. And so it may take some back and forth, but you're able to figure out what's best for your kids.
Yeah, it's a fun process. It's a learning process for sure. And I even tell my students that I believe Microsoft used Copilot to reopen 3 Mile Island up in PA. So we talked about that a little bit and how, and they asked, "Well, what is 3 Mile Island?" And I tell them it's a nuclear power plant that was shut down. And they're using it to power their data center. It's like we're talking that's how much data they use, and my students were shocked by that. And then when researching about data centers, how much energy they use, so that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Do you and your students have a lot of conversations about some of the ethical components of AI? What do those conversations look like?
They get real hard, and I tell my students like this is things that we have to think about. We may be able to make that decision as a human quickly, but then telling a computer to do something else is harder because you don't know what the scenario is. You're hoping that you have every scenario.
Mhm. Yeah. It's the energy usage, the deciding when to use it, when not to use it, what are the upsides, downsides, what
Yeah.
is okay to put into AI, what's not. I think those aspects are so important to think through, and it sounds like those are as you're having conversations in your class, those things I'm sure come up, like how to use this technology in a way that is not harmful or try to do as little harm as possible, and it is confusing and when you have technology that operates in this black box way that a lot of these chatbots do.
It's just like the example I gave earlier with a student or unfortunately took their own life because they were talking to AI. And that was some of the things like it's not meant for that. And students need to talk to other people, not just rely on AI. And I told my students, like, yeah, you use it in a way that fits for you, but be careful using it. And that's some of the safety things that we have to teach students, like how to be safe on a computer.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are really, really important things to think about. I have 2 questions left.
Okay.
First, I'm curious about what does like an empowered future ready educator look like in your perspective?
Man. So, a power future ready educator, just in my perspective, you're ready to accept any new technology that comes out. You're using those tools to plan your lessons. You're using those tools to really improve your performance as an educator. You're using those tools to learn more about what's happening. I think that's where I would go with that. It's harder to plan for those as a future ready educator because if you're new in the field, you need all the help you can get. Those first few years of me being a brand new teacher was hard. And that's something that I did not have a lot of help with around. I've really pushed for even with new teachers and they're struggling, they're trying to get lesson plans or they're trying to get something. I tell them, hey, why don't you use something like use an AI tool to help you come up with a lesson and or even create an AI lesson or I tell them, hey, AI EDU has resources for free that is useful and they have bell ringers. So if you want to put a bell ringer on, use that. And then you're not planning a bell ringer anymore. You have a bell ringer that's from this company that I highly recommend that is useful. And you talk about computer science in your room. And I have some teachers that have used it in their classes here at Flint High School, and I know some other people in the state of North Carolina have used those tools as well. So it's really been pushing those future ready educators to kind of look more to be using the new technology as best as they can to the best of their ability.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And, for anybody listening, it's just that ability to continue to learn. I saw someone, I can't remember their name, talked about how the most important skill of the future is the ability to be able to learn. And learning new technology is one of the things that we have to be able to learn. My last question for you, Mike, is about an idea or a question that is sitting with you right now. I always think of this as like the question that keeps you up at night, the things that you're like, it could be positive, but something that's just you're really spending a lot of time thinking about right now?
Or will my kids wake up at night? That's usually one of the questions I have. So I think one of the crazier questions is, where are we going with this? Like, how's education going to look like in a couple more years? So we're using artificial intelligence. It's here. You can't deny it. It is physically here. So what is the next step? What is the next step in education? When I was going for my first master's, one of the things I mentioned was eventually everything could be self-paced learning or it could be virtual learning. And that was before COVID-19. And then COVID-19 hit and we all had to go virtual. So I was right at one point. There's different schools that offer virtual learning options. That's one of the things I think is trending. So one of the things I ask myself is, what is that going to look like in a couple years? What is education itself going to look like in just a few years? Not even 10, 20 years down the road, what's it going to look like? Are we still gonna have classrooms? Are we gonna be meeting virtually again? No one knows, and that's one of the questions I have keep up at night because I only don't worry about myself as I enjoy teaching, but I also worry about my son and my kids because they are gonna need some sort of schooling, and I don't know what that looks like in a couple years.
Do you have a hope for when your first kid goes to school, what kindergarten will look like for him?
I hope that he gets into STEM. He seems real interested in STEM. Now he's only 2, so who knows what he's interested in, but he really seems to like technology and to play around with technology. I'm curious about my twins and how they're gonna react. My vision is that they enjoy learning. My wife is a former educator, and we're just both really pushing education, education be their forefront, and just really pushing and figuring out what can we do to best support our children, and what's that first year of kindergarten gonna look like? And that's a decision that we have to unfortunately make in a couple of years of how we're gonna do this. It's crazy to think about, and we're only just at 2025, and they're gonna be going to school in a couple more years.
It's interesting to see what that looks like, and I hope whatever it is, that the decisions that the state and schools and educators make are in the best interest of students. And I'm hopeful that we'll move in a direction that's positive and leads to more students being able to learn more effectively.
Yeah,
And I know as we've talked about a lot, there's just a lot of change happening right now.
and it's constant. It
It's
won't stop.
constant. So we'll see what it looks like. That's a wrap on our conversation with Mike McGuckin, a teacher who's truly shaping the future of education from inside the classroom. 3 quick takeaways from our conversation. First, use AI as an idea bouncer, not a brain replacement. Mike's approach is to offload the administrative tasks, like drafting lesson plans or creating rubrics, so he can invest his time engaging directly with the students. 2, your best AI detector is knowing your students. The most effective, honest way to address cheating is to understand your students' unique voices and to have open, honest conversations about when, why, and how to use AI. Finally, embrace the learning curve. For teachers and leaders who are hesitant, Mike's advice is simple. You have to get your hands on the tools. Experimenting with platforms like ChatGPT or Magic School AI is the first step toward building confidence to lead. To continue the conversation, you can connect with Mike on LinkedIn and explore the resources we mentioned, including the free AI literacy snapshots from AI EDU. All links are in the show notes. And if your school or district is ready to move from conversation to action, Kinwise runs everything from a 30-day teacher AI pilot to a 1-day AI leadership lab that helps district teams draft board-ready guidance. Details and bookings are at kinwise.org. Finally, if you found value in this podcast, the best way to support the show is to subscribe, leave a quick review, or share this episode with a friend. It makes a huge difference. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and stay Kinwise.